Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever wondered why you just absolutely melt when you see a tiny puppy? Or why we're all so obsessed with those viral videos of wild animals adopting completely different species? Well, it turns out it's not just because they're cute. We are actually looking at a deeply embedded survival mechanism that spans the entire animal kingdom. So let's dive right into the absolutely fascinating biology of why baby schemas trigger protection. Okay, let's kick things off with a bit of a mystery. A few years ago, researchers set up a highly unusual scenario. They took a fragile, tiny, 3-week-old kitten and placed it right in front of a massive Rottweiler. Now, this dog had never seen a cat in its life and had zero socialization around small, vulnerable animals. Based on standard predator and prey logic, the researchers were completely bracing themselves for a disaster. But what happened next is just incredible. The dog did the exact opposite of attacking. No bared teeth, no snapping. Instead, this huge animal slowly lowered its massive head down to the carpet, lay completely flat, and just started licking the kitten with these slow, unbelievably careful strokes. Within minutes, the dog turned into a gentle protector. The tiny kitten even crawled right up and fell fast asleep safely between its massive front paws. It really made scientists wonder, did the dog actually understand it was dealing with a baby? To figure out if this was just a total fluke or maybe just a really quirky dog, the researchers ran the test again. This time, they brought in a baby rabbit, then a tiny duckling, and finally an orphaned fawn. And guess what? Every single time, the exact same thing happened. An animal with jaws powerful enough to end a life in a split second totally softened its posture. Something profound was overriding its natural instincts.
Section 1. The biology of cute. Visual proportions.
So, what's actually happening here? Well, if we compare adult features to infants, whether we're talking about a puppy, a human, or really any mammal, we see that babies share very specific, identical physical proportions. While adult bodies are generally balanced, infants are totally different. Their eyes are way too large for their skulls, their heads are completely oversized, and their foreheads push outward prominently. And here's the crazy part. Those features are absolutely not a coincidence. Scientists call this specific set of proportions a baby schema. Basically, you can think of the baby schema as a universal biological distress beacon. These visual cues are recognized across completely different species, and their entire evolutionary job is to bypass conscious, rational thought and immediately trigger an overwhelming urge to protect. Now, to understand just how deeply hardwired this is, researchers at Oxford University actually put people into brain scanners and showed them photos of baby faces. The results were staggering. The reward and protection centers in the human brain light up in 140 milliseconds. That is literally less than the blink of an eye. What this brilliantly shows us is that before you even consciously realize you're looking at a baby, before your inner monologue can even go, "Ah, so cute," your biology has already commanded you to protect it. And crucially, the baby doesn't even have to be human. Just seeing those specific visual proportions of the baby schema is enough to flood your brain with protective instincts.
Section 2. The predator's paws, overriding instincts.
So does this instinct run deep enough to stop a wild apex predator right in the middle of a hunt? Well, over in Kruger National Park, observers saw a female leopard successfully hunt and kill an adult baboon high up in a tree. A brutal, everyday act of wild survival, right? But as the lifeless baboon fell to the ground, a tiny 2-week-old infant that had been clinging to it fell out of the tree too. Suddenly, this apex predator was face to face with a totally defenseless, bite-sized infant. What happened over the next few hours completely defied logic. The leopard climbed down, approached the tiny primate, and didn't eat it. Instead, she picked the infant up using a super tender carry bite, applying just enough pressure to hold it without breaking the skin. She took it into a thicket, groomed its spur, and fiercely guarded it from approaching hyenas the entire night. Think about that. Every single calorie she spent protecting this baby was biologically wasted, yet the baby schema completely hijacked the predatory instinct she was operating on just seconds before. Section 3. The sound of survival. Acoustic triggers. But wait, this biological hack isn't just visual. It turns out that across almost all mammal species, the sound of a baby in distress shares a nearly identical acoustic signature. Whether it's a kitten, a human maybe, or a tiny fawn, a crying baby emits these high-pitched, short, repeated bursts of sound. It's a specific acoustic frequency perfectly designed by evolution to just slice right through background noise and grab the attention of any adult mammal nearby.
Check out this brilliant experiment from 2014. Researchers hid speakers out in the wild. When they played the cries of baby fur seals to wild deer, the adult deer immediately rushed toward the hidden speakers. And when they played human infant cries to wild marmots, the marmots rushed the speakers too. Absolutely wild.
The mammalian brain isn't stopping to do a genetic background check, right? It's not sitting there wondering, does this infant belong to my specific species? It simply hears that specific frequency and registers a 5-alarm emergency. The universal translation in the brain is just, this is a baby and it needs help right now. Section 4. The dark side. Lethal competition. Now, as much as we all love a heartwarming cross-species adoption story, we have to look at the darker, much more complex reality of nature. Recognizing a baby doesn't always guarantee a gentle, loving response. The biological software that identifies a baby works flawlessly, but the behavioral output, it can be incredibly ruthless. Take male langor monkeys, for example. We have over 50 years of documented evidence showing that when a new dominant male takes over a troop, he systematically eliminates the existing infants. He doesn't do this because he fails to realize they're babies. Actually, the baby schema is exactly what triggers him. But instead of triggering care, that recognition triggers lethal competition. Eliminating the infants brings the females back into estrus, letting the new male sire his own offspring. This really dark flip side of baby recognition is also widely documented in lions, bears, and even dolphins. Section 5. Hacking instincts. The cuckoo bird.
And if that wasn't dark enough, let's talk about nature's ultimate biological hacker, the cuckoo bird. Its survival strategy is just ruthless. First, the mother sneaks her egg into a completely different species' nest. Then, when the massive cuckoo chick hatches, it blindly shoves the host's real eggs right out of the nest. But the real genius is the acoustic hack. How does this giant intruder get a tiny host parent to feed it? By flawlessly mimicking the high-pitched, begging distress call of an entire nest of starving chicks all at once.
The visual reality of seeing this bizarre giant bird in their nest is completely overridden by that acoustic trigger. By mimicking that exact distress frequency, the cuckoo essentially hijacks the host parent's biology. The poor host is forced into an endless loop, desperately fetching food for an imposter that literally dwarfs them in size, entirely powerless against the auditory illusion. Section 6. Older than humanity. Ancient biology. So, what's the big takeaway from this incredibly complex web of visual cues, acoustic hacks, and shifting instincts? Well, we humans really like to think of our empathy and our urge to protect the helpless as uniquely human traits, right? Stuff that elevates us above the wild. But this ancient biological software proves otherwise. Animals see it, they hear it, and they recognize vulnerability exactly like we do. The hardware is identical. The only variable is simply what their specific biology drives them to do once that recognition clicks into place. I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder today. If a ruthless apex predator, driven by nothing but an ancient biological baby schema, can sit in the dark and tenderly guard its prey's infant through the night, can we really claim that empathy belongs only to us? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope it completely changes the way you look at the natural world.